Hello and welcome to this short tutorial on opening a raw image and taking it from its raw state to a nearly finished image, and just showing you some of the things that you can do. So the image I'm going to use is one of Peter Knight's. He showed it at the last Beginners Club and we thought we could probably improve it, and Peter's given me permission to tear it apart, so thank you, Peter. So here we go. This is the image, and we'll just unzoom that. So this is how it comes in as a raw file, and this is fairly typical of what you'll see on a raw file with this sort of landscape scene. So the camera has struggled a bit here because we've got some very dark areas in the trees in the background there, and in this central tree as well, and we've got some very bright areas up in the top of the sky, and it's an example of where the range of tones in the image is actually too much for the sensor to handle in one go. So it makes a compromise. Now you could have used exposure compensation to brighten up the foreground, but you would have probably completely lost this top left hand corner if you'd done that. So this is what you get basically, and what we often have to work with. And a good clue as to what scope there is for improving things is to look at the histogram up here. And just as a reminder, the histogram, the left hand side is black, the right hand side is white, and the graphs inside it show how many pixels are in each tone all the way along. So you can see there's almost nothing in the top end, so there's a gap there, which is an immediate indicator that it's underexposed. If you had a gap at the left hand side, it would indicate that it's overexposed. Now, before we start changing the exposure, you ought to turn on these, what are called the blinkies up here, these two little warning boxes. What they do, they tell you if the exposure goes over the top or below the area where you'll lose all detail. So if I just show you an example, if I just wind the exposure up, you'll get to a point where you get all the red highlighting come in. Those are all areas where we've lost everything from there. It's gone right out. And you'll see the white highlight at the top here, which indicates that we're well overexposed now. And conversely, if we go down the bottom end, it'll all go blue and we'll get that highlight up there. So it's an indicator of how far you can go when pushing the exposure. So in this case, I'm going to increase the exposure to improve all the midtones that we've got in there. Now, you'll see I've just pushed it so that we don't get the highlights blinking, and if I take it back and move it up again, if you watch the histogram, you can see it just moving up towards the edge. So that's probably as much as I want to go, around about 1.5 stops of extra exposure. Now what you'll also find that you often need to do on a raw file is to put a bit of contrast in. Let's just put a little bit of contrast there. And when you've increased the exposure, you might find you create a little bit of a gap at the bottom. So what you can use is the black slider just to take it back. You can do a lot of this in the levels, in the curves control if you like, but it's easier to do it in Camera Raw here for now. So there we go. It still looks a little bit cool to me, colour temperature wise, with my weird eyesight. So I'm going to warm it up a bit just by moving the temperature slider over to make it look a bit richer. What you can do if you like is put a bit of extra saturation in, but don't go too far. Very rarely go up to 10 or beyond 10, otherwise it looks ridiculous. Now we've still got a wishy-washy sky, and I think there's quite a lot of information in the sky. So the highlights generally affect the sky. They just affect the brightest tone. So if we were to move that down, you'll probably find we could bring out more information in the sky, which we can. But there's more to come. So that's probably about all I do in Camera Raw at the moment. The only other thing you might want to look at is the clarity. Where's clarity gone? There it is. Now if you're going to adjust the clarity, I recommend zooming in. You see there's lots of detail in this file. It's a large file, and just put a touch more clarity in there, but don't overdo it, otherwise it kills it. There's a few blue spots coming in there where we've lost detail, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment. So there we go. So that's that's our image exposure tidied up a bit. In fact, I might go just a little bit more because I'm trying to make this my final adjustment of this area around here. So I think I want a bit more contrast in there. And then that will probably do. So now we open it in Photoshop. And there we have it. So what I'd like to do is to get more out of this sky. So I want to just adjust the sky. Now one way to do that is to put a gradient filter in and knock the whole lot down. The problem with that is that the tree goes well into where the gradient would be, so we darken all the top of the tree, and I want to lighten the tree. So that doesn't work. But with the AI that's in Photoshop now, it's much easier to select a sky. So if you go up to select at the top here, you'll see one of the options is to select the sky. So if we click that, it will go away and work out a selection of the sky. So you see we've got the marching ants, as they're called, all around here. If you press the Alt key and roll your mouse wheel, you can zoom in quickly. And you can see it's done quite a reasonable job of going around the tree. It's certainly good enough for what we want to do. The area that it's missed out on is a lot of the stuff in the middle of the tree here. So that's going to get left behind when we start adjusting. But there's a way over that, and I'll show you. Because once you've got a selection like this, you don't just have to use one tool. You can use more tools if you like. So what we can do is use the Magic Wand tool, which is up here. Magic Wand tool. And if you untick contiguous and then go down here and find a spot that's left behind. Now the tip of the wand is where it takes its sample. So if you click there, like that, you'll see it's selected all those bits all over the tree. I'll do that again properly now. I made a mistake. What I needed to have done was press the Shift key first. If you don't press the Shift key, it will just make a new selection. If you press the Shift key, it will add this to the current selection, which is what we want to do. So we've got most of the sky selected, and now we want to add these bits inside the tree. And you'll see there's a little plus symbol just underneath the magic wand when I press the Shift key. So I'll click there, and all those are now added to the sky. So press the Alt key and roll the mouse wheel to zoom out again. If you want to move around your image, the other quick way to do it is to press the space bar, and you'll see the hand symbol comes up and you can just drag it around. That's a quick way to get around your image. Now we'll see here that it's actually selected lots of other things that we didn't necessarily want selected, and I'm not going to worry about that for now because we can fix it in just a moment. So what we're going to do is to create an adjustment layer now so we can alter this selection. So if you come down here to this black and white circle, just click on that, and we're going to use levels. So if you look up here at the layers panel, we've got a new layer appeared called levels, which has got a mask in it and has got the levels adjustment. Now one of the things you'll see about the mask is that all the white bits are the areas that are going to be affected by the level adjustment, and you'll see there's a splodge of white at the bottom, which is all this puddle that it's selected, and we can get rid of that. I'll show you how. So let's do the adjustment first to the sky. So if we take this mid-tone, move it up, we're going to darken the sky, bring out all those moody tones, and then we're going to bring the whites down to make it brighter. I don't want to do that too much. Okay, we've managed to recover some cloud in the top here, which is rather good. Now I want to make it a bit brighter, but if I bring this down anymore, I'll probably lose that out the top. So I might just leave it there for now, about there. Okay, so that's the sky looking more interesting. But we've still got this, it's adjusting all down here as well. So the way to fix that now is if we select that mask, make sure it's got the white highlight around it, come over here and get a paintbrush, and with black selected as the foreground colour, we can now paint here on the mask. And so if we press right hand square bracket to make the paintbrush bigger, because we don't want to mess about with a small one, you need to make sure that your opacity and flow is at 100%, and you see the lightness coming back in. You can see as I paint across here, then we're getting rid of that erroneous selection that was made at the bottom. And if you look up here on the mask, you'll see all that white's gone away, or most of it. That should get rid of the last bits. So now that sky selection is really only looking at the sky. So that's not bad, is it? So that's sorted out the sky. The only problem now is, of course, the tree looks a bit dull. So the next thing we want to do is to select the tree. And we can use Photoshop's tools for that, and the best one I've found is the object selection tool. Once that's selected, you'll find these purple blobs come up as you go over things which it thinks it can select. So if we hit the tree, we get that as the selection. And if you just left click on that, that becomes our selection. So that's looking pretty good. So if we go up here, get rid of the purple blodging. So now we've got a reasonable selection of the tree. Now there's some areas where it's a bit iffy, but we can manually paint around that to tidy it up if it becomes a problem. So what we're now going to do is to create another adjustment layer here, and we'll do levels. So there we go, we've got another levels adjustment in there. This first one, it's a good idea to name these, otherwise you get in a muddle. So that first one we'll call sky, and this one we'll call tree. So there we go. So now we can fiddle about adjusting the brightness of the tree if we select that layer. So by moving that middle slider, it's really good for altering the midtones, we can bring that tree up so that it looks significantly better. So that's not bad, is it, really? So it's just 2 adjustment layers, and we've managed to bring up that tree and make it look a lot better. The problem we're running into here is it's really difficult to control that top left hand side of the picture because it's gone out again. So when we're doing things here, it's all interacting. So I'm wondering if we can just bring that back a bit. Yeah, it's really difficult because there's so little information up there. It's difficult to retain it. One of the ways would be to crop it out, but you'd have to crop about there. You'd lose those rather nice tones over there, but not to worry. So we've done a basic adjustment there. Now you can spend lots of time tidying this up. So for example, in this tree, where our selection has gone further than we really wanted it to, you can do the same technique as we used before with a paintbrush, painting black to tidy these areas up. And if you right click and set the hardness to 0, that means you get a fuzzy brush, okay, which means it's got soft edges, so it takes away the hardness, so it just becomes softer touch when you're making modifications. So there we are. So if we were going to leave, I wouldn't leave the photo like that. There's a couple of things that I want to do. There's some dust spots over here, and this ditch running over this way is taking you away from what I want to be the subject. I want the tree to be the subject, but this is taking you away and sending you up to that little house in the distance, which is not what I want. So I want to get rid of that. There's a couple of ways I could do it. I could just crop all that lot out, but there's other ways. We could use Photoshop's built-in tools to get rid of some of those things. So for me, if I was going to get rid of that road at the top there, I would use the polygonal lasso just to do a selection like this. Bring it back like that. Just a rough selection, and then use Edit, Fill, Content Aware Fill. And do you know why it didn't do anything? Because I'm on the tree layer. See, we all make mistakes. So what I should have done, a step I missed. Once I've done these basic adjustments up here and I want to start removing things and playing around, what I'd normally do is create a snapshot, or a stamp as it's called in Photoshop. And to do that, you press Shift, Control, Alt and E. And that puts a new layer in, which is a copy of everything below all added together. So if I can turn all these off below now, and they're not actually doing anything. So we've got that image. So that's like a stamp of all our adjustments so far in one place. So then the beauty of doing that is you can then play around with other things, but you can also go back to these if you want to later on, if you decide you've got in a mess. So we're like freezing this state, if you like. So if I was to do that again, paying attention, and like so. Now, you will sometimes find when you do this content aware fill, it appears to do nothing. And usually the problem is if you've got some feathering selected. So feather should be at 0 to do a content aware fill. If it's not, it takes pixels from all around and it ends up doing very little at all. So if we do content aware fill now, we'll probably get rid of that in a flash. Yep. So if I Control D to deselect that, and if we go and zoom in and look over there, that's a pretty good job of getting rid of that road. We could get rid of that road sign if that's a problem, but I'm not sure it's well, no, let's get rid of it actually. Same sort of thing. There you go. Control D to deselect it. That's it gone. So it's a really effective way of getting rid of things. Previously, before we had content aware fill, we would have cloned it. So we would have copied an area of the picture over the top of that, which is the old way of doing it. And that's all that this is doing. Content aware is looking at what's inside the box, looking at what's around it and trying to fill it with something similar. So the other area that's a problem is this down here. So this ditch is taking us away and out of the picture on the left hand side. So we could do a similar thing here. Come down here. Now content aware fill doesn't always do exactly what you want. Sometimes you have to do it several times to get the result you want. Sometimes it does it perfectly first go. It may not do, oh no, it's done it fine, look. So that's done absolutely fine. If you get a problem, what you could also try doing, Control Z takes you backwards by the way. What you could also try doing is make the selection again, and instead of using content aware fill, use generative fill, which is an AI resource, and it will then generate a fill in much the same way as content aware, but it's a little bit smarter. Sometimes it's too smart for its own good. So we could do it with nothing in there as a prompt. So we'll try that and see what it does. Just takes a little while working out. The time it takes depends on what computer and graphics card you've got. There we go. So it's not delivered any use at all. It's sort of assumed that we still want that ditch there because it doesn't know. So over here on the right hand side, you'll find it produces 3 variations every time. And in this case, the middle one is fine. So we can just take that. So that's left it looking quite natural, but got rid of that ditch, which is quite effective. And that goes in, a generative fill goes in on a separate layer. So we can turn it on and off, and you can see it's done a pretty good job of filling that. So that's looking quite good now, isn't it? So I think what I would do is to crop this now, because I don't like the tree bang in the middle. and I think I would get rid of that left-hand sky. I like this water puddle, whatever it is, as a start point. I like it coming in from the left. That seems to work quite well. And I'd probably do something like that. So cutting off most of that very bright area in the top corner. And there we go. So that's taken it all the way through from that raw file to somewhere near a finished image. Now you can play around with this a lot more to get the details spot on, and you might be able to do some more over here with that top end. Okay, sorry, I had to break off the recording to answer the phone. So now we're back. The only other thing that I haven't done on this picture, which needs to be done, is to get rid of those dust spots. So here we would use the spot healing brush tool. We can go into them a little bit closer, and you adjust the spot size just to finish it, to cover it over. Oh, sorry, cancel that. See, I'm doing it on the wrong layer again. So got to be on the right layer when you're trying to do things. So just blip on the spot and it will disappear. Just like that. It's effectively using content-aware fill to cover up the dust spot. So there we go. So I think that about finishes it off. If you've got any questions, feel free to contact me, and we can discuss this more at Beginners Club if you like. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Cheers.